Hey, Brant, good Shabbos. Those are some cool red pants you were wearing this morning. At least they looked red on the screen. I don't know what you're wearing now. Hi, Larry, good Shabbos. Hi, Joanna, Shabbat Shalom. Just going to wait for this to fill up a bit, then we'll start Mincha. Who's there? Is that, hey, Ed, Shabbat Shalom, good to see you. Okay, I think we'll get started. And we'll do the Mincha service. We'll do some Torah reading from the Chumash, and then we'll have some teaching with Rachel, and then Mariv. Someone else joined, but I can't see who it is yet, so I'll say Shabbat Shalom to them when I can see their face. The pages will be called from the Lev Shalom, and then the Slim Shalom, and then the Sim Shalom. Hi, Gary, Shabbat Shalom. So in the Lev Shalom 214, in the Slim Shalom 226, in the Sim Shalom 558. Ashrei Oshrei Veitecha, Od Yalu Chasela, Ashrei Ham Shekacha Lo, Ashrei Am Shadonai Elohav, Tehila LeDavid Armim Chalei Melech, V'Avrach Hashim Chalei Lambed B'Cholim Avrach Kabbalah Hashim Chalei V'Oram. Wachut Acham Achut Kol Mershad B'Chut. Oh, hi, Larry. Shabbat Shalom. Now I can see you. Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'varech kol basar, shemkot shel olam ba'ed. V'anachnu nevarech ya, mi'atav olam, hallelujah, u'ba'al Tzion goel, l'shavei feshav Yaakov, ne'um Adonai, v'anizot, briti ortam, amar ruchei al tzir Be'ata kadosh yoshev tilot Yisrael v'karazel zev yamar kadosh 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 Adonai tzvaot meloch kol haaretz kevodo u'mekablin dein midein v'yamrin b'kadish b'shmei meroma B'tisa'eni ruach v'eshma acharei kol rash gadol baruch Adonai mimkomo u'ntelatni rucha shemid padrag Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Leman yizamercha chava v'lo yidam Adonai lo haya lemadeka baruch hager shertach b'Adonai. V'yivtechu v'chayod eishemecha ki lo azavta dorshecha Adonai Adonai chafetz leman tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir. We'll now read from the Torah. I just got to get a Chumash. 1 second. Okay, we are in Parshat Yitro, the first aliyah of Parshat Yitro, which doesn't get into the Ten Commandments. It gets into the encounter between Moshe and Yitro on Moshe's kind of way back from the whole Exodus moment. And you can follow along in the Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 432. If you're out of a different Tanakh, a different Bible, it's chapter 18. I don't have the exact breakdowns from because I don't have that Siddur in front of me, but I think I remember where they are supposed to be. But either way, I'll just be reading through the first aliyah. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu mimitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Vayishma Yitro chohein midyan chotein Moshe et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe u'lYisrael amo ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mimitzrayim vayikach Yitro chotein Moshe et Sipora eshet Moshe achar shilucheha Bi'et Shnei Vaneha Asher Shem Ha'echad Gershom Ki Amar Ger Ha'iti Be'eretz Nochriya V'Shem Ha'echad Eliezer Ki Elohei Avi Be'ezri Vayatzileni Micherev Paro. I think that's where the first one ends. Vayhavo Yitro Chotein Moshe Uvanav Vishto El Moshe El Amidbar Asher Hu Chonesham Har HaElohim Vayomer El Moshe Ani Choteincha Yitro Ba'elecha Ve'ishtecha Ushnei Vaneha Ima Vayetze Moshe Likrat Choteno Vayishtachu Vayishaklo Vayishalu Ish L'Rehu L'Shalom Vayavohu Ohala Vayesaper Moshe lechoteno et kol asher asa Adonai lefaro ulmitzrayim alodot Yisrael et kol hatla'ah asher mitza'atam baderech vayatzileim Adonai. I think that's the end of the second one. I'll never forget when you're a rabbinical student at JTS, your senior year of rabbinical school, you give what's called a senior sermon. You have one Shabbat of the year that's your sermon to give, your Shabbat to give a sermon. Now that's all being done digitally. I actually watched one this week from a distance. And a good friend of mine whose father had passed away that year, his senior rabbinical school, his senior sermon happened to be on Parshat Yitro and gave a beautiful and wrenching sermon, basically taking Moshe to task here in this scene, and talked about the weight of being a leader, where Moshe felt more inclined to greet his father-in-law on the way home from this moment rather than greet his wife and kids, right? In verse, how long has he possibly been gone, bringing the Israelites out of Egypt? And when he gets there, he sits down to kind of talk politics with the other leader as opposed to going to reunite with his family. And he spoke about the burdens and the pressures of people who are in leadership and how that pulls them sometimes away from the most core people in their lives, and how resonant it was for him now that he was going to be confronting the rest of his life without his father. It was a beautiful and painful Dvar Torah. We're now on verse 9, a wonderful two-word phrase. I'll just linger there for a second. Vayichad Yitro. It's from the root chedva. You might know the word chedva from the Sheva Brachot. Gila, Rina, Dihitza, Vechedva, all these synonyms for joy. And Yitro was joyful. There's a comment by, I believe it's the Sforno, who wonders why the Torah says that Yitro is joyful al kol hatova, on all of the good stuff that he heard. Is he not joyful on the about the downfall of a tyrant, the downfall of the tyrant Pharaoh? And what Sforno says is, no, Yitro is the kind of person who was responsive to the tears of the oppressed and paid less attention to the things of the oppressors that made them tear up. So he's joyful that the Israelites are finally free, but he doesn't spend too much time having joy over the downfall of Pharaoh. Vayichad Yitro al kol hatova asher asa Adonai liYisrael asher hitzilo miyad Mitzrayim vayomer Yitro Baruch Adonai asher hitzil etchem miyad Mitzrayim umiyad Paro asher hitzil et ha'am mitachad yad Mitzrayim ata yadati ki gadol Adonai mikol Elohim ki vadavar asher zadu alehem vayikach Yitro chotein Moshe ola uzvachim lelohim Vayavo Aharon v'chol ziknei Yisrael le'echol lechem im chotein Moshe lifnei ha'Elohim. And that is the first Aliyah of Parshat Yitro. I don't see, we're expecting someone who needed to say an El Maleh, but I don't see them here. Is there anyone here who has a Yort site this week or coming up? Okay. So we'll close the Chumash. And we'll move to, I guess, the Aleinu to finish up Mincha before Rachel will do some teaching. Aleinu, page 231, 248, or 598.
Yamida.
I keep doing that. Is that the second time I've done that?
Yeah, it was about 4 months ago or so.
That's so funny. So now that I keep doing it, I've done it again. I can't believe I just missed that. Yes, I have nothing against the Amida, and I'm in favor of us davening it. Thank you, Larry. I'm so eager to hear Rachel's Torah study. Page 223 or 234 or 574, the quiet Shabbat afternoon Amida. Thank you, Larry. צדקתך צדק לעולם, בתורתך אמת, וצדקתך אלוהים עד מרום אשר עשית גדולות אלוהים יחמוך, צדקתך כראל, משפטך תהום רבה, אדם ובהמה תושיע אדוני. Now Aleinu 231, 248, or 598. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה להיות בראשית, שלא עשנו חויי הרצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים, משתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא שנת השמיים. על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהינו ליאור מהרה בתפארת זכר לתקן עולם מלכות שדי. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Is there anyone in this group that is saying Kaddish? Gary, you are? Marlies?
Marlies.
Okay, so we have, I can see 8. People, there's 9. Is there a 10th we can bring?
Benji, I'll get my son.
Or Diane?
Can you come down for a second? We're okay.
Oh, you got it?
You got Benji coming down.
Okay, good.
Come
So,
down quickly. You
hi, Benji.
Hi.
Warner's
No
Kaddish, page
Make it
232, 249, or 600. Yitgadal,
Yeah.
Yitgadash,
Gadash,
Shemei
Shemei
Rabbah.
Rabbah.
Amen.
Yama divrak yirte v'yamlich malchate b'chayachon v'yomechon chayedachol beit Yisrael ba'agalav v'zman kari v'yamru amen.
Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mavorach Le'olam Le'omel Maya.
Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'olam u'almei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha v'yichu.
Brichu.
Le'olam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran ve'alma v'yamru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Was that the dog whimpering, Gary?
Pardon?
Was that the dog
Yes.
whimpering in the back?
Yeah, he gives the color.
Yes.
He still misses you.
Tell him I miss him right back. I'm now going to yield over to our intern, Rachel Cohn, to do some Torah study. I will be off camera just so I can sit and rest my legs a bit, but I am here, present, and
You
engaged.
actually unmuted it.
Thank you, Rabbi Kligfeld. So if you have the sheet, that's great. If you don't have the sheet, then that's also great. We'll be beginning talking about a piece of the text just after what Rabbi Kligfeld read for us from the Torah in Exodus chapter 18, verse 14. So if you're reading in a Chumash, you can jump in at Exodus 18, 14. So what we'll be looking at tonight is a section of the text where we find Moshe in a predicament that perhaps many of us can relate to, of multitasking to the max, being very overwhelmed and stretched and stressed in his capacity to handle everything as a leader. Namely, the situation where he was ruling over a bunch of different cases that people would bring to him to act as judge. And this is a precursor to the system of the judges that was established. And thankfully, Moshe got some very good mentorship from Yitro in this section. This is, again, before the receiving of the 10 Commandments. And I happen to view this section as part of Moshe's sort of leadership preparation for him to be ready for the moment for everybody to receive the 10 Commandments. So that's some of why it interests me, but we'll take a look at it, unpack a little bit more about what might have been happening behind the scenes for Moshe as a leader and how he might have grown from this incident and this mentor relationship from Yitro. So beginning in chapter 18, verse 14, I'll read aloud a little bit and then I'll invite discussion for most of the time. So we see Moses' father-in-law, who we know as Yitro, saw how much Moses had to do for the people, and he said, "What is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you act alone while all the people stand about you from morning until evening?" Moses replied, "It is because the people come to me to inquire of God. I decide between one person and another, and I make known the laws and teachings of God." So he gets some pushback, and that's Moshe stating plain and simply, like, "No, Yitro, you don't understand. This is just how the situation is. There's all these people. They come to me. I teach them the laws of God." So Yitro, I think, knowing his audience well, gives him the following response. "You will surely wear yourself out, and these people as well. For the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone." And then I didn't include this part on the sheet, but Yitro proceeds to give him a bunch of advice about how to set up a system of judges so that he does not have to act alone himself, and carefully choosing wise people from the population to assist him in this task. So then this is the part where I think Yitro knew he must have had enough of a relationship with Moshe to know this might have hit home. So if you do this, and then the translation, I'll look at the Hebrew in a moment because the translation is a bit tricky, but we could say, if you do this and God commands you, or when God commands you later, you will be able to stand. All these people too will go home unwearied. Or another translation is, all of these people will come to their place in peace. So their place could be getting home after standing in line waiting for a judgment from Moshe, or it could be the people collectively getting to the promised land. But either way, it seems like Yitro is saying minimally something about God's commandedness being tied to the urgency of this task of delegating, and it being something that will benefit not only Moshe, but the people as well. So I'm curious for your thoughts when Yitro says, "You will wear yourself out and these people as well." What might Yitro be referring to if Moshe continues to be the only person acting as a judge? Why would it wear out the people and not only Moshe? Like, it's obvious to me why it would wear out Moshe, but why would it wear out the people as well?
Justice delayed is justice denied.
Yep. Yeah. So, right. If they're waiting long enough, well, say more about what that means to you.
No, I mean, if you're so burdened and the people are bringing the problems to you and you can only do so much, then their problems won't be addressed and they won't get justice.
Right. Great. Bacharach, you had a thought also?
I had another shot with the dog in the background, but the other thing is that it's like the virus right now, the pandemic stuff, people are waiting in line and can't get results. There's a major amount of frustration. Forget about the frustration. There's nothing happening. It's not even denied. It's not even denied, just denied. It's just that there's just such waiting and frustration because they can't talk to him from that standpoint.
Right.
And
the waiting.
Anxiety, right?
Yeah, right. The kind of that stasis builds frustration, anxiety. He could give the best ruling in the world once they get to the end of the line. But if they have to wait so long that they've built up frustration about, whatever the issue is probably continuing while they're waiting also. So it's like, whatever his expertise is diminished by the fact that they have to wait. Great. Any other thoughts before we, Larry?
Yes, he's not going to give the best decisions because he's overburdened.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you want to open it up now, but I just mentioned every morning when we read passage rabbinic texts, as Marshall instructs us to do when he's doing Pesukei de Zimra, in the Slim Shalom, there's a page of text about truth, and the last of the 4 texts there is from Shabbatot. Page 10, Amud Aleph. And I won't read the whole thing, but it's about Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rabbi Huna, who sat in court the whole day, and then Rabbi Chia bar Rav Barav of Gifta, told them that, and it quotes verse 13, the people stood about Moses from morning until evening. And he says, do you really think that Moses sat in court the entire day? He says, when would he have time to study Torah? From that, I understand he doesn't mean literally studying Torah. When would he have time to prepare himself for the decisions that he's making?
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on from there.
Very nice. Nice connection. Right. That he needs to refresh his own ability to think clearly, and that's going to be diminished. I have a lot of friends who are doctors, and they've said residency is terrible for that kind of thing, because you're supposed to be learning to be a doctor, but they put you through these super stressful conditions where they don't feel like they can be the best doctor possible because they have no sleep. So Moshe might be in a situation like that. Great. Any other thoughts before we look more at Moshe's behind the scenes? Okay, so I mentioned that I think Yitro knew his audience and he was saying this because he when he links it to commandedness, like that's probably a thing that Moshe pays attention to. So what we're going to look at in some of the commentaries is what's behind that commandedness and why might it be part of God's wishes for Moshe to delegate. I mean, I think all of the things you mentioned are already part of, like God would wish Moshe to be a successful leader, and you've all named many reasons why he can be more successful by delegating. So, but is there somebody who has the sheet who can read the Chizkuni piece, under what was standing in Moshe's way?
I'll do it. It says, God's statutes and God's teachings. Moses refers to the statutes and teachings that God had already taught him prior to the revelation at Mount Sinai.
Great. So this maybe provides some insight into why Moshe felt really only he could do it, because there was this revelation that we read about in this prior chapter in Exodus, where it's unclear who exactly got the teachings. So in this Chizkuni, he's probably reading it as only Moshe got this information about these statutes that came before the 10 Commandments, which we know at least a large segment of the people, how we read whether the women were there or not is debated. But once we get to the 10 Commandments, it's a large chunk of the people who get the commandments. But what Moshe is saying here, according to Chizkuni, is, oh, well, I have to be the one to teach them God's statutes and teachings because I have this body of knowledge that is unique to me. Nobody else knows it. Do you buy this as a response, a justification in response?
I don't know if I buy it, but I will say this, is that it's one of the dangers of having all the knowledge in one person. It does you no good to have a system of judges if they aren't taught the law. So in some respect, if Yitro wants to have a delegation of responsibility, you have to make sure that the knowledge that the lead person has is properly delegated to these other people, or the people suffer from the unqualified judges.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that some of this goes against one strand of work culture in America that says, make yourself, essential to the organization, make yourself not replaceable. Gary, you have something to add? Or Marlise?
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously you could think of Moses teaching, appointing judges and teaching them then, but at some point Moses isn't going to be able to work anymore and he's going to die. So it makes sense he's going to need to transmit this to other people to carry on God's commandments. Great.
So that connects to my next question, which was going to be, what do you think Moshe is so afraid of as he's maybe saying, no, this is my knowledge, it's mine, I'm the only one who has it. So you kind of, maybe you mentioned that eventually he's going to die. So that, that could be one of the fears, the things he's pushing back against is his own mortality and the limitations of the lifespan of him being the leader of the people. But I don't, you can add more thoughts to that before we jump to other people.
No. Yeah, I mean, I guess that sounds like that could be a reason. Yeah, I don't.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to say, do you think there are other things Moshe is afraid of in wanting to hold on to everything? Larry?
Yeah, well, not intending to be too critical of Moshe, I think that his story is a cautionary tale about someone who has the power, and for reasons that we justify in our tradition, he's in some senses unwilling to actually to share it and to pass it along. It kind of reminds me of a story that I once heard from Jerry Rawlings, who was the president of Ghana in the 1990s, I think 80s and 90s, and he said that when he took over, actually in a revolution, and then he was elected president, he had a lot of things he knew he needed to get done. And then when his first term was up, he knew he had to run again because it was unfinished business. And then when that second term was up, he said, well, there's nobody else around, so I'm going to have to do it again. But then he stopped himself and he said, well, if I don't step aside, no one's ever going to step in. And the world is full, especially Africa, but the world is full of examples of leaders who may, not because they want to acquire power, because they think there's nobody else that can do it. But as my friend Bitzala Bechor used to tell me in Israel, a common Israeli expression, the cemetery is filled with indispensable people.
Right. I'm thinking now of if anyone's seen Hamilton, the musical, the part where George Washington is saying to Alexander Hamilton, we have to teach them how to say goodbye because the vision will live on. If I let go of this, then the vision can live on past me in a way that, right, if people view themselves as indispensable until the end of their lives, then in some ways it limits the extent to which they can pass on that vision and let it grow.
Maybe there's a Torah in an alternative universe where Moses steps aside much earlier.
That's a midrash waiting to happen, right?
There's no Jewish people without the bringing up and providing knowledge to those below you. You know, corporate America works like this all the time. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. Most law firms don't survive their founders. And it's precisely because of this problem, is that they don't actually bring up the mid-level people to actually assume the role of responsibility. So when they die, the law firm dies with them. And I'm just saying that it's sad to watch, happens every day. And it's the big test for the law profession. Can the firm survive its founders? And the ones that do are the ones that teach the people that are below them how to assume the role of responsibility in the business of the firm and all the details and all of that. I've seen it so many times over my 33 years. It's just amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's a world I know very little about, and it's interesting to hear about. I think that there's probably in many fields a tendency for ego or just human nature in general to get the best of us and make us feel strong when we are holding everything. But I think Yitro is pointing out something really important here that actually you're not strongest when you're holding everything in your one portfolio, let's say, and there's a strength in sharing it. So let's look now at part of Yitro's wisdom in trying to convey this to Moshe, specifically in using the word, like either God commands you now or when God commands you in the future, this is going to be necessary. So is there somebody who can read the Or HaChaim? Larry Rosen.
Sure.
Oh, wait, I think the other Larry had raised his hand, right? I couldn't.
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay, great.
Perhaps Yitro was afraid of Moses, arguing that after all was said and done, he would forfeit the opportunity to perform the commandments, including teaching the people God's ways, and that it was not the way of the righteous to look for ways to ease their burdens, even if they would tire from shouldering them.
Great, thank you for reading that for us. So it sounds like Yitro is anticipating some of Moshe's pushback here and saying, you know, Moses is a guy who's really worried about fulfilling God's commandments. Moshe might think that actually he needs to fulfill all of the commandments by continuing to like hold the Torah and teach it to people kind of, you know, one at a time in solving these cases. And that he might think it's actually part of God's command to him as leader to be the one who's holding all of that Torah in his, you know, in his basket. But so what is, so like, what do you think Yitro is trying to offer instead? What do you think Yitro is trying to tell him instead?
It's Yitro's own way of of assuring that Moses fulfills his task.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if the task is so burdensome and it's too much from one man, he'll shirk from the responsibility. And so what Yitro recognizes is that that cannot happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to prevent that is to spread the burden out.
Right, right. And it sounds like that's actually, you're going to be closer to fulfilling God's command if you do this thing. That like maybe you were viewing it as it was your job to hold on to it, but actually it's your job to spread it out, to let it go. That's why I titled this sheet setting Torah free. It sounds like Yitro is telling him that actually it's part of your commanded job here to set the Torah free, to not be the only person holding on to it. Yes, maybe God gave you part of it just to you, but it wasn't meant to stay there. And it's your task to set it free and to give it to others. So I wanted to close with this one line from Midrash Bamidbar Rabbah that it's used in many contexts, but I think it's important to mention here. The line that says there are 70 faces to the Torah. So I take this line to mean really that there are many more than 70 faces to the Torah, that actually each of us in our own faces and being reflects one piece of the Torah that is not there unless we are there to speak it and live it. And maybe an additional thing that Moshe was worried about was that transition from being, you know, Moshe, the face of Torah, to allowing Torah to be reflected in the faces of so many more people. We know that they're about to get the 10 commandments, and you know, which was not a simple task. And Moshe faced his own other leadership challenges when the people, you know, they botched something that he I'm sure is also afraid of it not going as well. That if I have all the Torah, I will know what's right and I will know what's wrong and I will do it perfectly. But part of that leap that he has to take is not only in sharing it, but also as the Torah goes to, you know, all of these 70 faces of Torah, that sometimes people are going to make mistakes and need to patch things up. And part of the learning of Torah is how to rebuild when that happens too. So I think much of this episode that Yitro has helped lead Moshe through here is part of his preparation to get ready to let the Torah become very expansive when it's given to the Am and not just to him, and to set up the system of judges as one transitional way of starting to let that Torah become bigger than him and become a legacy and not only his own teachings. So I hope that whatever it is we are holding on to and wanting to become part of our own legacies, we find the joy and the courage to help set it free and let it go and let it not only be something for us, but something for those we care about and the rest of the world to really enjoy. So any other quick thoughts before we go to Mariv? All right, so we will.
One comment.
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, when you're talking about reasons that Moses could be hesitant, I mean, maybe he liked feeling special being, you know, the one prophet. Yet I think we can also see that it really doesn't diminish him to share the knowledge. He may have felt that it does, but he's, the singular, person that he is. So.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you. Anything else? Alrighty. So we will now move to our Mariv service, which begins in Lev Shalem on 264, the Slim Shalom 281, or regular Sim Shalom page 200. Vehurachum yachaper bon velo yashchit veherbala shiva po velo yair kol chamato Adonai Hoshea hamelach ya'anenu v'yom korenu. Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uven laila Adonai tzivahot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ari b'ravim Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amchavta. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. אל מלך נאמן, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת ואמונה כל זאת לפנינו. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה בני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות תוסיף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Hashkivenu on page 267, 284, or 206. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד. ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן. ברוך אדוני כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו. We are skipping Chatzi Kaddish, so we will go to the whispered Amidah for the conclusion of Shabbat. So just remember to include the additional section at the conclusion of Shabbat. We'll join back together at the conclusion with some melody or another. Yehiyu v'ratzon imrefi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzori Adonai tzori v'goali. If you are still davening, please continue at your own pace. And if you are ready to continue, we will skip Kaddish Shalem and jump to page 684 if you are in the regular Sim Shalom, and I believe everyone else can continue where they are. V'hino Adonai Eloheinu aleinu u'ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu u'ma'aseh yadeinu konaneu. Yikra'eni ve'enehu imo anochi b'tzara achaltzehu v'achabdehu orech yamim mashpiehu ve'arehu b'shuati orech yamim mashpiehu ve'arehu b'shuati ve'ata kadosh yoshev tilot Yisrael v'karazeh el zeh ve'amar kadosh 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 Adonai tzvaot melech kol haaretz kevodo. V'tisa'eni ruach ve'eshma for kol rash gadol baruch kavod Adonai mimkomo. Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed. Baruch hu Eloheinu shelenu lechodo. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר. We'll jump now to Aleinu on page 281, 297, or 696. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו בגויי ארצו ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. We will conclude our Mariv service with Mourner's Kaddish. Marlise, would you, are you feeling inspired to lead us again?
How many people do we have?
Do we still have 10?
Yeah, we're probably okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh. Excuse me. Just wait, okay. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shnei rabbah. Ve'almadi v'rak hirtei ve'amlik malchutei v'chayachon yisrael nechon v'chayed ho beit Yisrael v'agalau b'zman kariv v'yimru amen.
Minha mirabam vorach le'olam me'omaya.
Le'olam me'omaya. Yit barak v'yishtabak v'pa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh Biyad Hadar V'Talei V'Talal Shemei Kudsha Brichu. Le'elam Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tushvachata V'Nechamata Damiran Be'alma V'Yamru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yamru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Ben Ramav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Yamru Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Marlise. Rabbi Kligfeld, why don't you bring us home with Havdalah? Do we have to wait 5 more minutes? I can't remember exactly what the Havdalah time was by you.
What time was candlelight? Anyone remember?
I know that Zoom out starts in 5 minutes. I don't know if that's scheduled for Havdalah time on the dot or.
I think we're probably good. I think candlelighting was
5 o'clock.
Yeah, we're good. Let me go get. I'll get the stuff. Give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
Brent, were those the pants you were wearing this morning that the rabbi commented on?
Yes. Yeah, they are, as a matter of fact. I've received a lot of comments about these pants lately. I don't know what it is.
I had a pair of pants like that in the early 1980s when I lived in South Carolina.
No, I'm just saying there's obviously too much gray and tan and brown in the world. I'm just saying that's why people keep commenting on them.
I think it's great. Why do you think I wear all those different colored t-shirts?
Yeah, I get it.
My great grandpa had a pair of those pants back in the old country. Okay. Eftach velo evchad Ki yozi vezimrat Adonai vayehi li lishua Ushavtem mayim bisason Mimaynei Yeshua L'Adonai Yeshua Alamcha berchatecha sela Adonai tzevaot Imanu Miskav lanu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai Tzevaot Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Yoshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu La Yehudim Haita Ora Besimcha v'sason v'yikar Kein tiyeh lanu kos yeshuotesa Uv'shem Adonai ekra Adonai 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech borei pri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech borei minei besamim Baruch atah Adonai Mochalam Borei Miorei Ha'esh Baruch atah Adonai Mochalam Avdil B'kosh Chom Nechoshek Ben Yisrael Mimin Yom Hashvil Sheshem Yamazeh Baruch atah Adonai Ha'mavdil Ben Kodesh Lecho Ha'mavdil Ben Kodesh Lecho Atoteinu yimcho Zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe kacho v'kahakochavim balayla Zareinu v'chaspeinu yarbe kacho v'kahakochavim balayla Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Atishbi Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Agiladi Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Atishbi Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Agiladi B'meheira Yavo Elinu Im Mashiach ben David b'mehira yavo eleinu. Im Mashiach ben David. Shavua Tov, everyone. Tonight, in just about an hour, 7 o'clock. It's not going to be on Zoom. It's going to be on Temple Beth Am's Facebook page. The, 7th or 8th or 9th episode in our Sacred Sounds Unbound series, our spiritual musical concert series that we are partnering with Temple Emmanuel Beverly Hills. Tonight, it is Deborah Sachs-Mintz, an extraordinary voice and talent from the East Coast, who will be joining us for this concert. Come. It's open to anyone, so share the link. Just tell them to come to Beth Am's Facebook page. It'll be starting in just under an hour. I won't see you, but hope to co-experience all this with you later on. Shavuot Tov, everybody. Hasher Koach, Rachel.
Thank you. Shavuot Tov. Deborah is awesome. I just want to second